if you make a monster and you think that you can keep the monster in a box, there is bound to be a day when the monster splits out of the box and it will be very difficult to contain. That is exactly what has happened today. It's important for people to know that this has been long coming. The Sudan army under former dictator al-Bashir built the RSF as a way to outsource murder and mayhem and genocide. In recent months, there has been talk of trying to transfer power from the military in terms of the integration of the paramilitaries into the national army were not favorable to them, and they started a war.
Professor Jok Madut Jok, thank you for joining us. So would you tell us just briefly, give us a brief history of where this came from?
Certainly. Before we talk about the current dynamics, it's important for people to know that this has been long coming and it's been long in the making. Part of it is that the two parties at war now, the Rapid Support Force, which is the paramilitary, and the Sudan Armed Forces are essentially one, in the sense that the Sudan army under former dictator al-Bashir built the RSF as a way to outsource murder and mayhem and genocide in far-flung areas of Sudan, including Darfur particularly, but other areas. So in recent months, there has been talk of trying to transfer power from the military, which they took in 2020, transfer power to a civilian government by merging the two sides. The terms of the merger, which meant the RSF would have to be co-opted, integrated into the National Army of Sudan, did not go very well with the leaders of the RSF because they felt that this was going to simply disarm them and render them powerless. So they decided the terms of the integration of the paramilitaries into the national army were not favorable to them, and they started a war in Sudan. That is essentially what is going on, but it's almost to say that if you make a monster and you think that you can keep the monster in a box, there is bound to be a day when the monster splits out of the box and it will be very difficult to contain. That is exactly what has happened today.
So as we stand now, what is the situation there? I heard some earlier reports that hundreds of people have been killed, more than 400 people have been killed, and thousands have been injured. What's the current situation?
The current situation is a situation that nobody in Sudan, in Khartoum particularly, would have ever fathomed, because the Sudan government and the elite of Sudan, the people in the political parties, the people in the military, had in a sense taken a respite from history. All the things that were happening in the peripheries, in Darfur, in Nuba, in southern Blue Nile, in the South Sudan before independence, are now happening in Khartoum, and they are absolutely shocked. So what is going on is fighting, incessant daily fighting between the RSF and the armed forces of Sudan, which now means that ordinary homes are being looted by the RSF. The international community, as it were, is fleeing the country, a massive exodus, very difficult sight to see, where all the diplomats and the UN mission are all fleeing Khartoum right now, heading to Port Sudan, hoping to be evacuated by their countries. Nobody, none of them is thinking about, so what happens to the Sudanese? The international community was in Sudan and now they are fleeing. Nobody is thinking about, what about the staff that used to work for us? What about the people who used to guard our compounds? What about the maids who used to cook for us? What do we do? What do the Sudanese, ordinary Sudanese do as the international community is exiting Sudan now in a massive, spectacular exodus? This is what is going on now. As far as the Sudanese themselves, people are holed up in their homes, no water, no electricity. The internet and the phone connection is going down day by day. Very soon, they will be without contact with the outside world. Very soon, they will have no food, they will have no water. Medical facilities, up to 40 major hospitals in Khartoum today are closed because they have been robbed, they have been attacked. Many medical personnel have either been killed or seized by the RSF to treat their people. Like surgeons, all the surgeons in Khartoum are being rounded up to be taken to RSF camps in order to treat their injured people. And the ordinary people of Sudan have nothing, at least in Khartoum. Every citizen in Khartoum now is trying to flee to whatever rural home they come from.
Professor, what is the cause of this recent explosion? I know you explained that this has been a long time coming. This has been something that has been brewing for a while, but this talk about merging those two forces has tipped the balance here. But we're hearing reports here in the States about the fans of this situation, the flames of this situation being fanned by the Wagner group, the Russian forces that have been there. Do you see evidence of that?
Okay, so the RSF, which is a paramilitary run essentially by a former livestock trader called Hamdan Daglo, who is now the head of the RSF. He has had liaisons or contacts with General Haftar in Libya, with the Wagner group, who are in Central African Republic. There have been support and supporting each other. Hamdan Daglo himself has been involved in mining of gold in Darfur, and the Wagner group have been the ones connecting them to Russia. So the Sudan gold is being sold in Russia. That is the link. Recently, there were reports that the Russians and the Libyans may have invested in supporting them financially, but it's not financial support. The RSF have been contributors to Chad and Libyan paramilitary forces. What Hamdan Daglo and the RSF are doing currently in connection to Russia is selling gold to Russia. So there is quite a lot that is hanging on the RSF with regards to war in Ukraine and the sanctions, the Western sanctions on Russia, and Russia having difficulty accessing resources. Gold, Sudan's gold is financing one aspect of Russia-Ukraine war.
Let me ask you this question. How important is Sudan to Russia and the Russian forces right now?
Sudan in general is as important as any other African country, not so significant. But as far as the RSF and Hameti, the head of that force, is concerned, Russia is extremely important because it is Russia that is the biggest buyer of Sudanese gold. And the beneficiary is the RSF.
It's very interesting. So what next in Sudan? What do the people do there now? I mean, you've already told me that people are trapped in their homes. No food, no water, no electricity, and fighting is going on. What happens now are the peace negotiations that I've heard have been going on have fallen apart very quickly after they've been established. So what next?
Yeah, the most important thing is that the whole region of the Horn of Africa and East Africa are watching this with a great deal of concern, because the Sudan falling apart is extremely bad for the whole region, particularly South Sudan, which is to the south, Ethiopia to the east, Eritrea, and across the Red Sea to United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and the Houthi war there, backed by Saudi Arabia and United States. All of it is linking to this war. And it's important that Sudan gets stabilized as quickly as possible. And anybody who is thinking that we should wait it out until somebody wins are simply waiting for the ordinary Sudanese people to perish. And I think as soon as possible, the African Union, the IGAD, the European Union, the United Nations should all put their heads together to see the quickest possible way to appeal to the passions of these two leaders, Al Burhan on top of the army and Dagalo on top of the RSF, should sit down and, at least to begin with, to find corridors or passage for people who need to flee and for people who need to bring humanitarian aid into Sudan, at least to keep people safe for the time being. And then after that, talk about possibility of a ceasefire, of a negotiated settlement to bring Sudan back from this terrible situation to a situation where people can talk peace, people can talk about democratic transitions, the RSF and the Sudan army can be merged, and the citizens of Sudan being allowed to select their leaders going forward.
Well, Professor Jok Madut Jok, you have done a great job of explaining this to us. I appreciate you taking the time to talk today about this. I hope we can talk again soon in the very near future about this, because as you said, this doesn't look like it's going anywhere anytime soon. And we in the West need to know about this. We need to understand this and need to push for some kind of solution. So, Professor, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.